My name is Arin Lindauer, and you're listening to A Life Without Struggle. I'm a wife, a mother of 2 wonderful children, a 2-time best-selling author, and a highly driven and successful entrepreneur. In my 17-plus year career as a mindset and health expert, I know what holds women back from a life you only dream about. Whether you're a CEO, a businesswoman, or executive, I started this podcast because I have been where you are, and I know you want and deserve more out of your life. I believe women are limitless. We just get lost along the way. The process to get you there is the topic and purpose of this podcast. When you understand what you want, you can truly step into a life without struggle. Welcome, and I'm so thankful you're here. Welcome back to another episode of Life Without Struggle. My name is Arin Lindauer, and today we're going to dive into how we handle plateaus in weight loss. So this is something that inevitably can happen in anyone's journey. And it's something that I thought, is probably appropriate to bring this topic because we all will experience some form of a plateau. I would love to think that all women and men would just go down, 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 down on the scale. And while that is completely physiologically possible, it typically doesn't happen that way. And so I wanted to really dig into this topic, help better explain some things and why plateaus happen, what you can do about it, and most importantly, just help you if you're kind of in that place right now and you're saying, man, I saw some weight loss and I've kind of stalled, what's going on? What do I need to change? And I'll give you some tangible, here's what to do with this. So here's the problem, and what happens in weight loss is we get all excited. We have this new goal. We're really just pumped for this new life, this vision that we have for ourselves. And so we start making changes. And at first we are really excited. We're like, dang it, I can say no to the pizza. We're like, no thanks on the cake. Like, we're fired up. And then it starts to kind of wear off. And I, first and foremost, I just want to acknowledge this, that in any goal, think about it in business as well. When you first start your business, you are just head down, guns a-blazing, getting after it, and you're excited, right? And then it kind of sets in like, oh crap, this is harder than what I really thought it was going to be, or there's more to it. And what I'm here to tell you, especially in a weight loss goal, or honestly in any goal, there's no goal that this doesn't apply to. You're going to have to be more consistent than you ever thought. And this is where no one is an overnight success, whether it's a business goal, whether it's a relationship goal, or a weight loss goal. There's no such thing as, you just wake up one morning and all the weight's gone. And so what do we got to do? What do we got to focus on? So the first thing that I really want to dive into is, are we really in a plateau? Have we given it enough time? Because 1 week is definitely not a plateau. 2 weeks is not a plateau. 3 weeks is not a plateau. 4, okay, we can start considering that, hey, okay, something must be up. But it's going to be 4+ weeks, especially for women. We have to absolutely work through an entire cycle for ourselves personally. And typically this is going to have to be a couple months of, man, things are not moving. What gives? So first and foremost, I do want to call out that it's not just a couple weeks and the scale didn't move. While I can appreciate that is absolutely frustrating, I've seen the scale myself seriously hold for 4 weeks plus and not move, and literally doing all the things. And here's the deal. The second you want to give up, that next day, literally that scale moves, and it moves significantly, or at least I've found that in coaching women, but also in myself personally. So number 1, have you given it enough time? Number 2, you really want to dive into, has anything changed from a work, stress, how has your sleep been, family obligations? You really want to put your finger on the pulse of what all is really going on in my life? Again, I always say life will happen the second you start taking care of yourself. It's inevitable, right? Like, I think we're setting ourselves up for failure if we believe that everything's just going to go right. No, nothing's going to challenge you. Nobody's going to get sick. The school's not going to call you, or, something's going on with a kiddo or parent. There's going to be something. And I think truly this is really where you learn everything about your behaviors and how you handle stress. And especially when you're desiring a different outcome and life starts to present itself. This is something where I'm going with this is typically when we're exposed to quote unquote stress, whatever that stress is looking like for you personally, we have different coping strategies or ways that we have always quote unquote worked through it. And from my experience, we either go after food, or we go after alcohol, or we go after both. So it's something where you really want to be real with yourself and asking yourself, am I handling the stress in a way that's going to allow me to still hit my goals? And it's okay to say, man, I'm not. I've definitely had those times in my life where, I wasn't handling the stress the way I needed to stay in optimal health and really taking care of myself. And I really believe it is absolutely flipping a switch inside of ourselves mentally, saying the food is not going to solve my problem. And for me personally, the alcohol is not going to change an outcome. And if anything, it's going to make things worse, right? So you really want to dive deeper into, how am I handling stress? How do I want to handle stress? What do I always do to handle stress? What would I like to do to handle stress? And here's the deal. This is not a snap your fingers and everything is just solved, but it's a big awareness piece. We have to really understand that when life isn't going exactly the way that we want it to, what do we tend to go towards? I know for myself personally, when I get uber stressed, I do just want a glass of wine. And typically I want to go to a restaurant and I want someone to serve me. And I don't want to have to cook dinner or, make sure everybody's happy, right? Like I can just ask someone else to make somebody happy, right? So it's really important to understand how we handle stress, and especially if we find ourselves stalling on the scale because something's not adding up. And typically we're not creating enough of a deficit. We're maybe thinking that things don't really matter, or, oh, this won't impact my results. And I've got a few more things that I'm going to go into on that topic, but I'll get to that here in a couple points. But we really have to check ourselves back to the foundation. Are you getting enough sleep? How many steps are you taking? For a lot of women, they do not realize how much those steps actually matter. For a lot of women, they'll say, well, you told me 7,500 to 10,000 steps. Fair. That is a fair starting point for most women. But sometimes we absolutely have to hit 10. And then sometimes we actually have to take that number to 12. Now, rarely do I have someone go above that, but if we're barely hitting 7,500 on a daily basis, that is your number one priority, okay, along with food. But I'm here to tell you, if you're not moving your body, it is going to be a challenge. This will absolutely be a challenge. Sleep is so important. And again, I find myself, just assuming that everybody understands this, but I'm going to really speak into this because when you don't get enough sleep, when your sleep is trash or garbage, or, it wasn't good one night, it was okay the next, it was terrible the next night, all that's doing is messing with your circadian rhythm. It's messing with growth hormone, and when it's released, you're not getting your optimal levels of melatonin. There's a lot that actually goes into this. Then the next day, when you're tired, groggy, your body doesn't crave a chicken breast. I wish. Yeah, it craves carbs because we need the glycogen. We need the quick hit to get us awake. This is where we tend to go after sugar or sugary drinks, or I'm just going to run to Starbucks and this will be fine. It's not a big deal. I just need the caffeine, right? I went to order, in the time of this recording, it is now pumpkin spice latte season. And I'm not a huge pumpkin spice latte fan, but I will have one a season. And I was at a conference and I was like, I'm just going to need something a little bit more to keep me going here. And I went and I ordered a pumpkin spice latte, but I told her, to lighten the milk. I told her no whip. And I said, hey, I just want one pump. And that's when she looked up from the cash register and she goes, geez, take all the fun out of it. And I was like, yep. But it was just enough. Like, I don't know about you guys. I don't like all that syrup in the drinks anyways, especially when you don't consume sugar on a regular basis. It's just enough to get the little spice hit. So anyways, yes, now that Arin is super uncool and unfun, it's all good, but it keeps me on my goals. So you want to think about sleep as just a continual something that you work on. And instead of priding yourself on not getting enough sleep like I used to, really pride yourself in, man, I was in bed. Like last night, I knew my daughter's not been well. And so I knew I was going to be up in the middle of the night with her. And so I just literally went to bed when the kids went to bed. And even though I got terrible sleep, I actually still hit 7 total hours, like 7.5 hours. But I looked and I was in bed literally 10 hours. But it's because I went to bed when I put the kids to bed. And now I know not everybody can do that, but I purposefully did that last night because I knew I'm going to be up with a sick child most of this night. And if I'm not, cool, I'm just going to catch up on some Z's and that will be a good thing too. And I'll get up early, which is what I like to do. Today, not so much. The other thing too, to really lean into, especially if you're feeling yourself in a plateau, is, okay, am I hitting all those workouts? Now, I don't want to put as much pressure on the workouts from a weight loss perspective. That's more, strength, adding lean tissue. This is more just healthy aging, desired look that we want. So I just want to put workouts in here as an asterisk because they do absolutely help you burn more calories and help you burn more calories at a higher rate longer throughout the day. So that's a whole added benefit from strength training is you actually will have higher post-oxidation consumption. I forget, it's called EPOC. So it's after exercise, you actually burn more calories after. So think about these things. Has it been over 4 weeks? Has anything changed in my stress? Am I getting enough sleep, steps? How are my workouts? Then I want you to go into a couple more points here. How many extras are you really having? How many gimmies? How many tastes? How many licks? Are we being 100% honest with our calories? Now, here's a huge caveat with this. This is where, honestly, this is the biggest opportunity. Because if we are seeing a plateau, we've deemed that, hey, the scale is not moving. Typically speaking, we're not being 100% truthful with ourselves with how many calories we are taking in. We've allowed some of the old habits to sneak back in, or the different ways that we would cope with stress have snuck back in. And so this is where I truly believe the biggest opportunity is we have to be honest about our calories. Did we have a few more snacks? Did we, eat a few more things that the kiddos were eating? Did we say yes to a few more treats at work? Or, we've got holidays coming up now. You can have, and so this is where I have a huge hang up with food tracking, specifically in something like MyFitnessPal or some of the other apps, is we can have about a 500 plus or minus swing when we track something in the app. If you're not weighing and measuring every little thing and then making sure that you are 100% selecting the proper grams or ounces or whatever it is that you're measuring and putting in there, you're going to have a good 500 plus or minus. The other thing, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, and I thought I should mention it, is if you're going off of a food label, that food label, according to the RDA, it is allowed to be off 20%. So again, that could be a pretty big swing on some food items that you're having, or if you're keeping your calories, pretty tight. That there can have a good swing when it comes to how many calories you're actually consuming. So it's important for us to get really, really real. Like, I am a huge advocate of personal responsibility. I am the first person to say, man, did I mess up here? Can I do something better? How can I do this differently? And I've really learned that the more inward I go on things and fix things with myself, the more at peace I am, the better I hit my goals. And you're just a happier person because ultimately at the end of the day, you're the one in control. And for all my type A control freaks like me, it's very empowering. So I have been okay with this. But the last point that I want to make with this is when you are closer to your goal, you do not have the wiggle room of someone who has more weight to lose. So let me explain that a little bit better. So let's just say you're sitting around 200 pounds and you are trying to get to like 140 pounds. You have a good 60 pounds to go. You're going to have more wiggle room when it comes to, how you eat, how diligent you have to be. You still have to be in a deficit, but you have more play in those calories. When I have a woman that is, 140 pounds trying to get to 130, or she's, 150 trying to get to 140, you do not have the play that someone who has 60 pounds to lose versus someone who's in the last 10, in the last 5. Like everything matters. And so when someone has a good 60 pounds to lose, seeing them lose 2-3 pounds a week, no big deal. Like that's phenomenal. And I would coach her to say, hey, 1 to 2 is very, very normal. When a woman has, 10 pounds or less, it is very, very normal for you to see 0.25 to half a pound every single week. And again, we're not creating this deep deficit that just leaves you crazy, makes you want to binge. We're doing it in a way that is sustainable for life. And that's my huge preference with this. But it is very, very normal for you as you get closer to your goal that you will maybe lose a pound, but it's typically 0.5. I know for myself personally, when I was getting closer to a goal, it was absolutely 0.5 multiple times, but pretty quickly, okay, there's another 2 pounds. Okay, and it's brutal when it takes the amount of time, but I will tell you, I've never looked back from that point in my life and the weight that I was losing. And, I think for a lot of us, we will take the half pound, especially when it's a half pound and then it's another half pound. It will add up, but I can appreciate a lot of women being like, oh my God, that is not fun. That is not sexy. That's not exciting. But it really, really is because you're doing it properly and you're doing it in a way. The problem is we want to see that instant gratification. We want to see that scale move. And listen, honey, I got you. I totally get it. So I wanted to speak into these points because you've got to, when you're feeling like you're in a plateau, you've got to look at it and say, okay, how much time has really gone by? What has changed in my life from a stress, family obligation? Have I been getting enough sleep? Am I moving my body enough? Am I consistently doing my workouts? Are the workouts appropriate? And then you really have to hone in on how many extras you're having. Are you having little tastes and little snacks here and there and not really thinking that's that big of a deal? Are you truly tracking and knowing exactly what you're putting in your body? Because this is where I will tell you, most women have no idea. the plus or minus 500 calories. And especially if you're dining out, like just go ahead and chalk it up that it is going to be well over your calories. When I was traveling last week, I was super excited to go to, it's actually a franchise. And I love this place to go eat because they have really good quality food, but even their portions are too much. And even I was challenged while I was out there because, I love this place, so I'll go ahead and say it on here. It's called the Protein House, but even their portions and what is in their food, all the different oils and things like that, it adds up. And so most of the meals were a good 700 to 1,000 calories. And when someone is eating 1,500 calories a day, I mean, that just quickly throws you off, especially too, like for myself personally, I was eating 2 meals out. And so I had to really, really work on the portions and really watch myself to keep myself on where I like to be. So again, even when you are super mindful, a lot of us don't even realize, like when you roll up to Chipotle or, a Qdoba or some of the other places, like how quickly that meal can add up. So the thing that I want to dig into when you're experiencing a plateau, the things that make this even worse is when we're sitting in this plateau and we are absolutely having this pity party, this feeling really bad about ourselves. And we tend to start going back into our old patterns. This is when we see ourselves, self-sabotage, or this is where I see a woman get really crazy and get really restrictive on herself. Neither of those serve you. And so if you feel yourself going into this pattern, this is where you have to enlist your coach. You have to have someone in your back pocket to help you work through this and be completely honest and transparent with yourself on what do I need to do? What do I want to do? What am I willing to do? And sometimes you've got to pump the brakes, especially if life is really presenting a lot of stress and you just kind of hang here for a second, because life will cycle. Just like our bodies cycle, our life absolutely cycles. It will not always be the storm, okay? After the storm, what happens? There's always a rainbow. And so that's when I really encourage women to buckle back down. And it's never fun, the second, third, fourth time you're getting after this, but it's where you really have to challenge yourself on, hey, this is actually what I want. And so I'm actually going to go after it and get it. But you've got to really identify when old habits start sneaking back in, where you were so good at saying no to the chips and salsa, or passing on the margarita, or, hey, everybody else is having happy hour and you know what, I'm cool, I can hang, I'm just going to have, a sparkling water or whatever it is. You've got to really check yourself in those moments and say, what got me to this point, I need to go back to some of those things. And so the funniest thing is this is we're so quick to go back to old patterns, even though those patterns don't serve us, but we've done those patterns for so long. So I do want to just highlight that is when you feel yourself slipping back, this is where you have to get really, really real with yourself, and you don't have to go on this journey alone. And I don't recommend it. I mean, this is where I enlist my coaches and people in my sphere of influence to hey, help hold me accountable. But also when I tell someone I'm going to do something, I do it. And it's almost like I need that pressure. and I'm sure I'm not alone in that, but that's where having good coaches in your back pocket can really be helpful. They're not going to hold your hand and spoon feed you, but on the flip side, it's, hey, I stick to my word. This is what I do. And that is who we are. That's who we are. So last but not least, I want you to really take action with this. If you feel yourself in this plateau, all we got to do is make just some little adjustments. So we have to understand that you're going to have to get uncomfortable. And one person's uncomfortable is different for everybody. And this is something that I've been very, very in tune with. And so, okay, what do I mean by get uncomfortable? So when you're in weight loss, you are going to be a little bit hungry. You are going to feel these pains of, oh my gosh, I just want pizza, or I just want, a glass of wine. And you're going to have to resist those. You're going to have to remember why you want what you want. You're going to have to tell yourself like, hey, and so I go back and forth on willpower, because do you need willpower? Sure. But typically where I go is you've got to be so focused on who it is that you want to become. And you're just that woman. That's who you are. So that woman would say no. That woman would say, you know what, I'm okay. Or that woman would figure out, okay, when I feel this feeling, I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to get in a hot shower, or I'm going to go journal my thoughts and see if that can help me feel better. Or I'm going to reach out to my coach because I'm having a moment and, I really, really want to stay on point, but dang, this is tugging at me hard. The other thing that I want to really acknowledge is sometimes you do need to increase the output or decrease the intake. So typically speaking, and this is also speaking if you've lost a significant amount of weight, we may need to adjust your calories. You may be able to handle a deeper deficit, for example. And so, okay, what does that look like? Where before we had you maybe in a 500 calorie deficit, maybe you can handle a 600 calorie deficit. And it can literally be that simple, where maybe we were allowing, a little snack or this or that in there. Maybe we got to pull that back. So those are some things to really consider. And then the other thing that I absolutely will get after is steps. If you are not consistently hitting 10,000 steps, that needs to be done over and over and over again. And we may need to consider moving your number to 12. I know for myself personally, I have had to do that multiple times to get things to shift. It really wasn't what I was consuming. I just needed a little bit more and I wasn't willing, let me put this out there. I wasn't willing to take away anything else from a food perspective. And I didn't feel that would be the right strategy, but I could kick up my steps by 2,000 every single day. Okay. So those are two things that if you have been feeling this, you've kind of checked in with all the points that I had made. These are the spaces that I would really, really get honed in on. Is my calories where they need to be? And is my steps, do I need to increase my steps? Okay. So those are the two spaces. This right here, though, this topic is where I see most women absolutely fall all the way back. This is where it can be an absolutely slippery slope. This is where I would double down on your coaching and support. This is where I would never let all the success that you've had, do not let that fall apart. Okay. And I know you're not going to, that's not who you are. But I want to speak into this because this is where we repeat and we cycle. This is where it quote unquote got hard. This is where so many women, when I get on a call with them, they'll tell me, well, I had lost all this weight, but then this happened. Or I lost all this weight, that happened. And here's the deal. It is fair. But what I want to speak into is, hey, recognize this and realize no. Okay, I've let 10 pounds creep back on, not going to go any further. And you draw that line and you get back refocused, reboot, and you keep moving forward. And here's the deal. If you've gone all the way back, no shame in the game either. But did you learn? That's the biggest piece of all of this is, did you learn? We never need to beat ourselves up. We never need to have the negative self-talk. But we just need to be really, really real and honest with ourselves and just realign the actions towards what it is that we want. But if you don't work through what tripped you up in the first place, you're just going to keep cycling and repeating. So this is where a lot of times we are going to have to dig a little bit deeper into the psyche behind why we do what we do, the mindset, the mental programming, the things that are not serving you. And for a lot of women, that can be very uncomfortable, can be very vulnerable. It can be, a little embarrassing too. And I can appreciate that. But the more I've realized when I let things go, life can be so easy. It really can. There's going to be challenges, but you tend to handle those challenges way better. All right, ladies, let me know how this one sits. And if you feel yourself in a plateau, this is where I highly, highly, highly recommend enlisting the help of a coach. I would be honored if you would reach out to me and tell me, hey, this is what's going on. You can hit me up on any social medias. Feel free to DM me and let's get you out of that plateau. All right, ladies, take care.